the internet, Terrain Wench here again, as promised. In my previous video I went over how we did the stonework for this spawning pool. So if you're interested in that, by all means go check that out. If you don't really care and you want to learn a bit about water, stick around because we're going to work on filling the pool today. Okay, so there was not a lot of prep work we had to do to get this ready for water. But what I did add was a line of hot glue around the edges just to make sure nothing's going to leak out while we're pouring. And then I painted my little lizard guy, added him in there. He's actually recessed a little bit so it looks like he's deeper in the water, but we won't actually have to pour that much water. And then we should be ready to go. What I've been using lately for my water is this Easy Cast. It's a clear 2-part epoxy resin. You can find it usually at any craft store, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, whatever you have. There's other brands you can use, like Envirotex is a popular one, and they can sell this in like the gallon form. Usually cuts down on the cost a little bit for you, but I don't have a lot of storage and I don't do that much water work, so these little bottles work just fine. There's other things you can use, like the Woodland Scenics products, their water effects, or Easy Water. That would work fine too with this technique. The most important thing is really just read the directions on the product you're using. You know, mixture ratios, dry times, whether or not you should be wearing gloves, the emergency number you should call if it gets in your mouth. I mean, all these things are very important. So read your instructions. If you're not familiar with model water products, do your research. Do test pours before you actually work on your terrain piece. Otherwise, if you've used a product before, just use what you have. I have Easy Cast, so that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so this resin is a 1-to-1 mix ratio, so I want equal parts of each. And I usually just measure it out using a little spoon. It's probably not the most accurate, but it works okay. Like I said, we don't really need a lot, so I'm probably only going to do about 4 spoonfuls of each. So that's all measured out. It's probably going to be a bit much, but that's okay. You don't have to pour it all. So now the directions for mine say that you're supposed to slowly mix it for 2 minutes, and then pour it into a second cup, mix it again for another full minute. What we're trying to do here is make sure everything's blended as well as it can get, because we're trying to cause a chemical reaction. That's what it looks like, nothing special. But before we pour it, what I'm gonna do is add a little bit of green wash. This happened to be one of the freebies in an Adepticon swag bag. But, I don't know, seems to work okay. So I'm just gonna take one of my sticks here and drop in, I don't know, 2 or 3. You don't need a lot because we're not looking for a solid color here. We are just going to stir it a little bit to get some swirls in there. Hopefully you can see that. I don't want to mix it completely because when we pour it, we're going to have like a variation. Some spots are going to be green, some spots are going to be clear, and it looks a little more natural that way. So I'm just going to slowly pour it into my pool like this while it's not fully mixed. It's going to be hard to tell while it's wet, but we have blotches of green and we have blotches that you can see through. Okay, if you want, you can add more bits of green, like maybe to the corners, like more funky stuff would end up collecting there. So I'm just going to take that same wash, which I happen to spill, and cut out, so that's why I look like I have leprosy. I'm just going to dab some more on my stick and spread it around in the corners. So now we're just going to let this set up and dry. You want to make sure we're on a flat surface, and I actually see a lot of mine drifting to the left here, so I'm going to prop it up with a little something while I go to work. Okay, you probably have some air bubbles in there from stirring it. Usually while it's setting, they'll float to the top and pop, and when you come check on it later, it's usually pretty clear. If you want, you can try and tap those out, agitate it a little bit, and that'll help pop them a little quicker. Otherwise, yeah, I'm gonna let this set. I'm gonna go to work, and I'll check back with you guys later, because now our resin has fully cured. Hopefully you can see this. We have some green swirls in there from the wash. And now we are ready to pour a second layer of resin. We're gonna do exactly what we did the first time, except put in a different color. I'm gonna go with a lighter kind of turquoisey color. I don't actually have it as a wash. I'm just gonna use some Vallejo paint. So I'm just going to mix up resin like we did the first time. Probably only use like 2 spoons this time because I had some extra left from the first pour. Okay, I'm just going to make sure this is level. And let it set up to dry. Alright, I am back. Our resin is cured, it's hard. And now, hopefully you can see this. There's like a layer of blue swirls, and then under that you can see the green. And right now, I mean, you could leave it like this if you wanted to, but I really don't like it that shiny. I mean, you can see the reflection of pretty much everything in the room. So what I'm going to do is start working on the waves today. And how I did that the first time was, hi kitty, I used a gloss medium. This is Liquitex. I got it from the hobby store. It's usually in the artist section with the acrylic paints and paintbrushes. Just pour some of that onto a palette. And I'm going to work kind of in layers. First I'm going to start with just giving a texture across the whole surface of the water. So I'm going to dip my brush into the medium and paint it across the whole surface. And while I have it handy, I'm going to brush it over my lizard too, so he looks like he just came out of the water. And then, you know, the brush strokes don't really look very natural, and I really don't have a problem getting my hands dirty, so I just take my finger and I dab across the whole piece. Hopefully you can see this. Kind of gives it a like dimples and peaks to it from where my finger's pushing down and pulling it back up. There. So now when we do our waves, like even the spots that are in between the waves won't have that mirror, clear, really flat, really shiny surface. They'll have this little texture to it. So we're gonna let that dry just for a couple of minutes so it's tacky, and then we'll move on. Okay, our gloss medium is it's still kind of wet, but I think we can start working on top of it. This is the part that kind of takes a lot of patience. I'm just going to use that same high gloss medium, and hi kitty, really thickly dab on lines where I want the waves to go. So I think there should be like some circling around in front of him, like he's pushing through the water, and then they're kind of concaving behind him, and it's kind of moving out in semicircles across the rest of the pool. Doesn't have to look very good right now. We just want it to kind of take up residency. This is where we want the waves to go, because we're going to start shaping the waves after this medium dries a little bit. It'll become tacky, and then we can kind of mold it and shape it into the crests of the waves. You want to make sure you put a lot around the edges by the wall too, because the water would go up and splash against the wall. So we want to make sure we have material next to those that we can work with. And then in the middle, just keep working around in like a semicircle. It doesn't have to be a complete line either. I'm kind of doing breaks in the line, so I'm going, you know, a couple dabs over, missing a spot, and then doing a couple more dabs over. So like I said, we were gonna take these, you know, little mounds of medium that we made here and create waves with them. Right now we're gonna just have to wait for it to dry, because if I try and push it around, it just oozes back into place. So we're gonna wait for this to dry a little bit and get a little more tacky. Could probably start checking the ones we did first, like the thinner areas, to see if that starts making peaks. You probably can't see too well on here, but it's starting, it's getting there. So I'm just gonna wait a little bit longer, and then maybe we can start working with the first ones that we laid down. Okay, hopefully this is a good view for you. I'm trying to get as close as I can without being too obnoxious and have my hand take up the whole camera. But as we're testing it, I'm putting my bamboo skewer down like in the anti-wave area and pushing out and pulling up as I reach the edge of the glob. Still kind of wet, but in the thin spots it's working. So I'm trying to kind of push it away and pull it up to make the crest. My stick is leaving little grooves from where it went. That's kind of okay. It helps with the illusion. And we may have to do a couple layers. Like if our peaks aren't very tall, you can't see them very well. I'll go through and start with phase one, put a big glob of medium there, wait for it to dry a little bit. That way we can add some height to our crests. Now Now this medium, when it dries clear. These wet spots, they have this kind of milky blue color. But if as you're working you see some of these that are trying to get clear before you've worked on them, quick jump to those. They'll probably be ready to go. And you don't want them to dry as a big, smooth lump in your water. Right now I'm just going back to some of those first ones because they were still wet. They sagged a little bit. They started to melt back into a puddle. So I'm just going back over those to help make the peaks stand back up. And I'll just keep doing this until it's completely dry, just to make sure that they stay nice and perky. Okay, most of these are pretty well set, but they aren't very tall. Put this light back on. Focus. Focus. There we go. It's almost just like another texture on top. These around the guy are pretty good. These ones further away aren't very tall. Hi kitty. Sorry, she wants dinner. My cat's meowing in the background. So these over here, I'm actually going to go through and start over, where I'm going to take the paintbrush, add some more medium to them, and sit and try and sculpt them as they dry. One good thing is the medium I poured onto my palette has been sitting out just as long as everything we've been working on. So it's already kind of halfway dry. I shouldn't have to wait as long before I start getting my peaks on them. So just go over the same spots I did before and work on molding them into shape. Okay, everything looks a little bit nicer now that we built up 2 layers. If it'll focus, there we go. There's some more dramatic texture to it than just rough patches. Like I said, the stuff will dry clear, so what we want to do is actually add some white highlights to the tops of it so that it looks a little more natural, a little more contrast to the lower part of the water. So I'm just going to take a very small amount of white craft paint that you get from the hobby stores and mix it into the gloss medium I have on my palette. You don't need a lot of paint for it to show up, so we actually want kind of a higher gloss to paint ratio, so it's just a kind of a cloudy color, and we still want it to be like super shiny to match the rest of the piece. So I'll take some of the gloss white mixture. I'm going to kind of start at the high ridge of the waves to get the majority of it off. And then I will go back and kind of use the same motions we were before after I get most of it off my stick and sweep from the low spot to the high spot. Just so as it isn't just a stark edge, it flows from the wave up to the peak. Okay, I think we're pretty well set with the waves. Let's see if I can get this to focus without a shine. There's one last thing I want to do for the water. So if this guy was really moving around, the water under him would be super agitated by his legs moving. So I have a friend who makes a lot of tables, and he gave me a good tip for frothy water. If you take you know, your gloss medium or even like your resin, and you put in modeling snow, like I have woodland scenic snow. If you mix that together and dab it on, it'll you know, give you a nice frothy look. So I'm gonna mix that up real quick and then put some around like the guy's waist. So if you can see that, we'll let that dry, and the medium should, like I said, end up clear. Then we'll just kind of see the bits of snow in that lump around him. And then we should pretty much be done. I will let this dry, base it up, and I'll let you see the final piece before we head out. Alright, this is it. I just added some ground cover and some plants to make it nice and jungly. And of course our water. And that's it. This isn't a technique I would use on anything bigger than this, just because waiting for that medium to dry can be a little tedious and time consuming. So if you were doing like a large lake or a river to cross a board, I would pour the resin the same way in like 2 layers, and then for the waves I would use a caulk sealant like you'd use to surround a bathtub or like a kitchen counter. This is a little easier to use because right out of the container it's thicker and you can apply it to your water surface and it keeps its shape right away. A couple things I learned after using this a couple of times. You really want to make sure you're buying the right color, because there's some that dry white, there's some that dry clear. The clear color will give you like a milky translucent finish once it's dry. If you want something that's completely see-through, like a glass finish, you want it to say crystal clear across the top. Another good word you want to look for is paintable, so that kind of like on the spawning pool, you can mix in the white paint to dab the tops of your crests to give it that real frothy, high contrast look to it. I think that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to help out. Subscribe to the channel. There'll be more videos coming. Not sure what the next one's gonna be though, so if you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know. I'll see what I can do. And until then, follow me all over the internet. I'm on Google+, I'm on the Facebook. I have my walkthroughs over at terrainwench.blogspot.com. And I've also acquired a Twitter account since the last video I posted up, so that is at terrainwench. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Bye.